This is one of those episodes that feels like filler but really isn't. Though honestly, Pokémon Horizons doesn't really have filler episodes. One of the many things this series does extremely well is that even its slower episodes and/or episodes where nothing really happens still end up serving some kind of narrative purpose. They still push the characters and/or story forward despite being uneventful, leisurely paced, and simple. This episode is a perfect example of this. This episode works because it realistically tackles what comes after the end of a massive, meaningful, and powerful journey. Liko and friends just concluded the adventure of a lifetime. They saved the world, fought alongside legendary Pokémon, faced the explorers, witnessed things most trainers will never see, and reached what basically feels like the highest of peaks. After all of this, it makes perfect sense that they are exhausted, unmotivated, and left wondering what they are even supposed to do next. I can honestly relate to them. They went through one heck of a final battle, and I went through the longest review of my career so far. Obviously, my experience was nowhere as taxing as theirs, but after spending so much time on such a finale, I absolutely understand the feeling of being tired, listless, and like you need a vacation. They basically beat the game, watched the credits, reached the epilogue, and now the game is telling them to go do side quests. After everything they experienced, something as simple as catching a Feebas sounds almost insulting. But this is exactly why Feebas works so well as the center of this episode. On paper, it's unimpressive. Even the Pokédex calls it a weak, easy to catch, whatever Pokémon. So of course they assume catching it will be a piece of cake. However, hilariously, this specific Feebas turns out to be basically Goku reincarnated as a fish. No matter what they do, how they attack, or what they attack with, they cannot catch it. This is the crux of this episode because Liko and friends learn that every Pokémon is an individual. Common knowledge, Pokédex entries, and first impressions can only tell you so much. You can know what a species is usually like, but this does not mean you know everything about the personality, life, experience, or strength of one specific Pokémon. This Feebas is faster, stronger, more elusive, and way more capable than any of them expected, which helps reignite their love for adventure. I absolutely love how such a simple quest manages to teach them something so important and invaluable. I also love how this extends to the other Pokémon they encounter. At first, they see these Pokémon as normal, run-of-the-mill, wild Pokémon. Nothing special. They've seen them all before, so whatever, right? Nothing to get excited about. But after Feebas challenges their worldview, suddenly they realize that even some of the berry Pokémon they dismissed are unique and nothing like what they expect. Rhydon can surf, which is surprising to them, but not to us longtime fans. Kakuna are way more mobile than they thought. One Doduo basically starts flying like it learned Geppo from One Piece or like Mash burned dead. A Ribombee hides among a Combee and a Bespiquin, which is hilarious. Day 550, they still haven't noticed my presence. Day 600, it seems they've accepted me as one of their own. Also, clearly, one of these things is not like the others. And a Pelipper uses an electric type move, which immediately reminded me of the Pelipper from the episode You Said a Mouthful. Maybe someone should check if this Pelipper also ate something it shouldn't have. This contrast really helps this episode click. These Pokemon were always there, but Liko and friends needed their perspective changed before they could actually appreciate the special ones among them. They thought they had already seen the best and most amazing things the world had to offer. But this episode reminds them that there is still so much they don't know. There are still things to see and learn, and Pokemon that are unique, weird, and can surprise them in ways they never expected. Of course, they only learned this because of Friede. I love that even 137 episodes in, after everything Liko and friends have gone through, seen, experienced, and learned, Friede can still be a mentor to them. He still has things to teach them, and he can still help them when needed, which is great. Though I do wonder how he knew they needed this push, considering he's still working at Exceed. Maybe he's been keeping in touch with them and he realized that something was off? Maybe Orla, Molly, or Murdog told them? Though this is doubtful seeing as they too had lost their motivation. Or maybe he just came by for what he thought would be a fun little adventure, only to see the state they were in and switch his intent. Either way, it's clear that he knew what he was doing. Also, Liko and friends giving the adults a push means Friede basically set off a chemical reaction. He got the whole team back in action, which is wonderful. It's like he never stopped being their leader. I also think it's funny that in my previous review, I said Friede working at Exceed probably meant he wouldn't rejoin the Rising Bolt Tacklers for a while, only for him to immediately prove me wrong. But since he leaves again, he also proved me right. I guess, for the time being, he'll probably return whenever the story needs him to contribute in some meaningful way. I understand why this episode makes Feebas this much of a challenge, but it's still a little ridiculous. These characters have battled Elite Four members, champions, explorer admins, legendary Pokemon, and an alien crystal apocalypse creature. So watching them get completely outdone by a Feebas is funny, especially since it mocks/trolls them, and it serves the story, but it also stretches believability a bit. Realistically, catching a Feebas should still be a walk in the park for them. I guess this Feebas is secretly a legendary Pokemon. As the start of a new arc and potentially a new era, this episode is a little too slow and uneventful for my taste. I get why. After such a massive, bombastic, potentially world-ending final battle, we definitely needed something calmer. The story and characters needed room to breathe. But the beginning of a new arc usually sets the stage for what comes next. And here, what comes next is just, let's keep adventuring? That is fitting, and I do like it thematically, but it's also kind of plain. When this series began, we immediately had Liko, the Pendant, Terapagos, and the Explorers hunting them down. So right away there was mystery, intrigue, danger, and stakes. Even previous arcs gave us a clear goal, threat, or direction to start with. This premiere, by comparison, leaves a little more to be desired. It works as a bridge from the epic finale we just had into whatever comes next, and it works as an emotional reset. But it doesn't really give us a strong idea of what Wonder Voyage will be about. Maybe this is the point for now, and the bigger direction will slowly reveal itself later, but as a first episode, this is definitely too tame. I appreciate, as always, the callbacks. Roy and Skeledirge remember when they were chased by an angry Vespiquen in episode 14. Liko, Roy, and Dot remembered the Milotic they battled in episode 71. Alt remembers the swarm of Doduo that chased him back in episode 93. And Dot remembers meeting Sidian as Needle Thing in episode 103. These are all nice little reminders that their journey still matters, even the smaller moments that didn't seem important at the time. In this case, it also ties nicely into the theme of remembering the value of adventure. That said, I did roll my eyes a little too, because as nice as these callbacks are, this is also, again, the start of a new arc and potentially a new era. So part of me is also ready to stop looking back so much and start making new memories for the series to call back to later. I love that Ludlow is apparently away on business, but his business seems to be standing around in public posing as Mighty G? Is this a press tour, a fan meetup? Is he spreading the Mighty G name across the world? At this point, I honestly have no idea. After becoming a celebrity overnight, maybe this is just his life currently? Now, in my previous review, I said that I hope he's getting a cut of the earnings from all the merchandise being sold with his name and appearance, and that this would really help the team financially. Well, now I also hope that he's getting paid for whatever this is, too. It's also clear that he's still struggling to maintain the Mighty G form, and yet he still says surpass your potential, which makes it seem like this might be a training journey for him. Maybe after saving the world and inspiring so many people, he realized that the world still needs Mighty G. So now he is trying to overcome his limits and maintain the form for longer. But at the same time, he could also be giving people hope directly, letting them see Mighty G firsthand, understand what he represents, and motivate them to follow his example. I also love that even though he's away from the team, he still says his heart is with them. Then we go from his iconic pose right into the Rising Bow Tacklers doing their signature handshake, which is a nice touch. So verbally and visually, the episode reminds us that he's still with them in spirit, much like Friede. This is of course great. Regardless of what this scene is or means though, it's certainly random, funny, and a nice little follow-up. But yeah, that's the review. Overall, episode 137 was just alright. Simple, slow, tame, and unspectacular, but also realistic, relatable, meaningful, funny, and narratively fitting. As always, please let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you so very much for watching, and let's meet again in the next video.